Estamos aquí hoy en la tercera sesión de ayuda mutua. Entonces, primero que nada, bueno, la interpretación ya está en su lugar, ¿verdad? Les recordamos también que a los que están en persona aquí, que pueden comer la comida que está en la mesa. También los baños están ahí al fondo a la derecha. Y estamos en nuestra querida Prime Produce, que nos recibe, así que démosle un aplauso a Prime Produce. Y también tenemos la cooperativa Black Heart, que nos acompaña con la parte de tecnología, así que es todo trabajo cooperativo.
Maria, talk just to test the Zoom. Test it.
Probando. Probando. Estamos en nuestro sistema híbrido que requiere mucha coordinación, pero súper contentos de estar aquí. Y vamos a ver el siguiente slide, please. Ya espero que hayan escogido su canal de interpretación. Siguiente slide. Siguiente slide. Somos CINIC, la cooperativa de la Alianza de Economías Cooperativas de la Ciudad de Nueva York, y hacemos un trabajo de coordinar, conectar y juntarnos como estamos haciendo hoy para estudiar, aprender, reflexionar sobre el trabajo que estamos haciendo en la economía solidaria en la ciudad de Nueva York. Siguiente slide, por favor. Entonces, ahora vamos a tener una conversación de mutual aid sobre ayuda mutua en los primeros 20 minutos más o menos, y luego vamos a abrir el espacio para preguntas y comentarios. Siguiente slide, por favor. Y tenemos hoy, le damos la bienvenida al Centro Corona. Un aplauso, por favor. Está en Corona, Queens, haciendo trabajo vital en Corona, Queens. Tenemos a la colectiva de parteras musulmanas, que está también en Brooklyn, en Bay Ridge. Así que un aplauso. Les damos un aplauso. Siguiente slide. Tenemos a Bushwick Ayuda Mutua con Dani, que está aquí representando a la red de ayuda mutua de Bushwick. Un aplauso. Muy actives este grupo. Y en línea tenemos a Jay de Bluestockings, que nos acompaña para hablarnos de la reciente iniciativa de Bluestockings, de la que Jay nos va a contar, pero que está relacionada a una extensión del trabajo de nuestra librería favorita en el Lower East Side, que está proveyendo servicios que salvan la vida de muchas personas. Así que les felicitamos, y lo que nos trae juntos hoy es que, y también tenemos Mesh, que no tenemos una imagen, pero estaba en nuestro Instagram. En Mesh es una red de internet en la que ya varios grupos que están aquí hoy están utilizando el internet que está controlado por la comunidad, y Mesh es una red de instaladores que también entrena para que todas las personas aprendan a conectar el internet en diferentes nodos, y tenemos más de 1000 nodos en la ciudad de Nueva York. Siguiente diapositiva, por favor. Siguiente slide. Y para... Bienvenidos. Y para empezar, les queremos presentar nuestro marco de trabajo, que nos trae hoy juntos para conversar sobre la economía solidaria y nuestros principios. La economía solidaria es un movimiento de movimientos que seguimos recibiendo personas que están llegando. Entonces, nosotros les queremos presentar, hoy estamos aquí porque queremos analizar los dos principios de la economía solidaria. Uno, que es el cuidado colectivo, las relaciones y la responsabilidad, que es un principio de la economía solidaria, y les invito a que visiten esta página web, solidarityprinciples.org, que tiene, es bilingüe también, tiene 4 idiomas me parece en este momento, y ahí hoy vamos a reflexionar sobre esto, ¿verdad? ¿Cuál es el trabajo de cuidado que hacemos en los grupos de ayuda mutua y cuáles son los desafíos, las formas de trabajar, y lo que está funcionando y cómo podemos conectarnos más? Entonces, para empezar, el valor que queremos presentarles, un principio importante es que valoramos las relaciones por encima de las transacciones y los resultados únicos, ¿no? Es a largo plazo el trabajo que hacemos y creemos que los grupos que están aquí hoy hacen un tipo de ayuda mutua que se enfoca en este principio. Entonces, queremos conversar de cómo lo hacen y cuáles son sus versiones en específico de esto, ¿verdad? Siguiente slide, por favor. Y siguiente slide. Entonces, nosotros como algunos de ustedes ya saben, le damos la bienvenida a Yajaira, que acaba de llegar de la Morada. La Morada, bienvenida, un aplauso para el restaurante La Morada del Bronx. Tenemos representación del Bronx. Pasa, siéntate. Entonces, CINIC trabaja con nuestra membresía para hacer investigación, encuentros y también creamos colaboraciones, ayudamos a crear colaboraciones entre los diferentes grupos y hoy nos enfocamos en eso, ¿verdad? En invitar a varias personas para que conversen y poder al final de estas sesiones imaginar cómo se pueden conectar y utilizar los recursos y aprender de las experiencias. Entonces, un ejemplo del matchmaking que estamos haciendo este año y que les queremos contar para que también nos den su opinión. Siguiente diapositiva, por favor. Es que nos hemos unido con la cooperativa de Home Care Aid, que es CHCA, la cooperativa de cuidado a domicilio más grande del país, que está en el Bronx. ¿Quién conoce a Cooperative Home Care Associates? ¿Han oído escuchado? Sí, es la cooperativa más grande, la cooperativa de trabajadores más grande del país. Y en colaboración con el sindicato de la 1199, estamos preparando una conexión con la cooperativa de vivienda más grande también del país, que está en el Bronx igualmente, Co-op City, y entonces esperamos que este año vamos a tener varias fases de este proceso para que Cooperative Home Care Associates tenga una relación más fuerte con el sindicato a través de los miembros que viven en Co-op City y poder ofrecerles los servicios de cooperativas a personas de los sindicatos. Entonces, creemos que conectar personas que están conectadas a sindicatos y pueden trabajar con personas en una cooperativa de trabajadores puede ser una conexión importante para hacer crecer el ecosistema de la economía solidaria en el Bronx. Entonces, estamos súper entusiasmados y queremos invitarles a que nos acompañen. Vamos a tener un evento ahí en Co-op City a finales de abril, así que si les interesa, cuéntenos para irnos. Nos vamos a ir en grupo. Entonces, este es uno de los matchmaking que estamos haciendo este año y es nuestra iniciativa para desarrollar el modelo cooperativa sindicato. Y Cooperative Home Care Associates es una cooperativa sindicalizada, ¿no? Entonces, ese también es otro. Y nos preguntan, ¿y contra qué jefe o con qué jefe negocian? Y entonces la respuesta es, pues, la industria del cuidado de la salud, ¿no? Que es la que rige sus precios y sus tarifas y todo eso. Entonces, siguiente diapositiva, por favor. Y les ofrecemos este mapa, que también podemos hacer clic en el mapa para ver la página web. No, can you click on the map? Just to have I'm sorry, voy a continuar en español. Vamos solo para ver en qué densidad cooperativa nos estamos moviendo. Este es nuestro mapa de cuántas cooperativas existen actualmente en la ciudad de Nueva York, incluyendo grupos que son jardines comunitarios. A mano izquierda pueden ver cuáles grupos son. Y lamentablemente aquí no están mapeados los grupos de ayuda mutua, pero queremos incluir, obviamente, y pues precisamente también es el trabajo que seguimos haciendo, es un mapa vivo y seguimos añadiendo capas de información, pero esta más o menos es la densidad que podemos ver de cooperativas que existen en Nueva York, con formatos y modelos de control comunitario de la vivienda, jardines, Community Land Trusts, energía, CSAs, y queremos también poner el mapa de Mesh, que nos hace falta, que sería un mapa muy rico de los 1000 nodos de internet de control comunitario que ya existen. Entonces, este es el mapa en el que nos estamos moviendo hoy. Gracias, Yuko. ¿Podemos volver a la diapositiva? Siguiente diapositiva. Y nuestro trabajo de lo que queremos hacer incluye estos 4 pilares, que es pensar en un cambio de sistemas del capitalismo, el imperialismo, el patriarcado. Queremos dar más visibilidad al trabajo que hacemos, mejorar y fortalecer la cultura de propiedad colectiva y el desarrollo de ecosistemas cooperativos. Entonces, las cosas que hacemos con los grupos tienen estos 4 pilares y esperamos que conversar con ustedes y apoyar para que sigamos desarrollando esa visión. Siguiente diapositiva, por favor. Y hasta ahora hemos tenido 2 sesiones y Ali nos va a contar.
Hello, everybody. How you doing? How y'all feeling in this room? How's it going? Yeah. Give me some energy, y'all. How about that Zoom? How's the Zoom room feeling? Please share your feels, your emojis, your wishes, your desires, your questions, your praise for Maria's wonderful presentation. I'm here briefly just to talk about our first and second sessions of this series. As mentioned, this is number 3, which is focused on mutual aid. But back in February, we had one that focused on money and finance, as represented by these 3 awesome speakers, Rosa, Denise, and Alicia, who work with community development credit unions. Who in the room or the Zoom is part of a community development credit union? Any members here? I see some hands. I see some interest in that. And these are credit unions, which are financial cooperatives that are mission-driven to serve the community. And we have many of them, as displayed in our map, that are awesome, and they could interact directly with housing and mutual aid groups and beyond. So that was a great event. A lot of people are taking interest in some of our members that are credit unions. Similarly, we had an event the next month, in March, last month, focused on housing and land. Who is fired up about the issues of housing and land? Yeah, I see that fire. I see the energy. So we had wonderful speakers also representing that issue and solidarity economy approaches to affordable housing cooperatives, namely a leader within Co-op City in the Bronx just mentioned, an awesome community land trust project in East New York, and then also a longtime land trust in the Lower East Side. And all of these different efforts are basically trying to address affordability and push for taking housing out of the speculative market and make it a human right, and also think about how they might, again, interact with other sectors of the solidarity economy, whether it be through money, or talk about who they're hiring for home care, as just mentioned, or also how they might relate to community gardens, or various forms of how communities are meeting their needs. So that was an awesome event. And there's a lot to follow up on in both cases in terms of engaging with the credit unions, in terms of being part of some of the fights around housing, and more specifically to support something called the Community Land Act, which is kind of heating up and relates to making it easier to create land trusts and affordable housing cooperatives. So some of y'all maybe were there at those 2 events. How'd they feel? Were they nice events? Did y'all get informed, energized? Yeah, I'm feeling that. I'm feeling that energy right now in the room. I'm telling you. So, just gonna pause. Anybody want to just mention anything about these 2 issues briefly that comes to mind before we get to kind of our main event in the chat? Any chat notes we should shout out, Chivi?
Lots of exciting people joining on Zoom. We have members of the Scenic Board, members of Nick Knock, folks from Home Care Cooperative, New York City Network of Worker Cooperatives. We have Jay repping for Bluestockings. We have Flatbush Mixtape with Q repping. So very exciting. Thank you everybody for adding your name and affiliation. If you feel like it, give us an emoji of how you're feeling. And yeah, and oh yeah, so we're gonna start with some chants. Entonces, when I say people, you say power. People. People. And the folks online, as we're doing chants in a very soft voice, feel free to put up emojis that you think represent that chant, and also that maybe encourage / shame our participants in person to put some energy into those chants. Just kidding. Cuando digo centro, dicen corona. Centro. Centro. When I say prime, you say produce. Prime. Prime. When I say la, you say morada. La. La. Cuando digo mesh, dicen internet. Mesh. Mesh. When I say blue, you say stockings. Blue. Blue. When I say Muslim, you say birthworkers. Muslim. Muslim. When I say Bushwick, you say Ayuda Mutua. Bushwick. Bushwick. We got it.
Thank you, Chibi, for that energy. I believe now we're ready to gonna get into our main event. Oh, Aisha, please have a seat. Welcome. Nice to see you. And Maria, please take it away.
Yes, so next slide, please. Welcome, Aisha. Hi. So why are we here today? We're talking about mutual aid, and we would like to have your take on what is mutual aid. But these are some of the ideas that we had during our workshops last year. And so, who would like to start? You can introduce yourself, and you can tell us. I think our timekeeper is going to give you the time, but you can tell us what kind of work you do, and you can introduce your group, and then after, and what is your specific focus? Yeah, because we have people that are more than one person from each group. So feel free to share what you do, how do you relate maybe to the solidarity economy values, or what comes to mind when you talk about mutual aid. In terms of these solidarity economy ideas, we think that the practice of mutual aid is the nervous system of the movements of the solidarity economy, right? And so we want to know how you see that as a space in which we are caring for our communities, and what are the specific things that you do, and the specific kinds of care and values and principles that you are that you have in your practice. So who would like to start? Then we can pass the mic and popcorn. You can have few minutes, no, maybe a couple of minutes to think, right? Because we have to think and pause. And so let's do that. And in the meantime, as we said here, we are also exercising our muscles to renew our ability to have ideas and ways to run our lives in the ways that we want towards organizing a society in the ways that we want, right? And that looks different in each neighborhood, but the idea of connecting, and if you want to amplify that more how we can coordinate, how can we think about these nervous systems that connect and are part of the movements of the solidarity economy that is happening globally, internationally. Is not a new thing. We know it has existed as a practice forever. And so, yeah, I'm gonna pass the microphone, and who would like to start? You can raise your hand and I'll give you the mic.
Voy a hablar en español. Everybody has interpretation? Yeah. Okay. So, hola, mi nombre es Mónica Avilés y soy una mamá de Queens, de Corona Queens. Estoy hoy con Centro Corona. Y para mí, la ayuda mutua me hace como bulla también a un término que usamos en Ecuador. Entonces, como que lo volví a ver acá con Centro Corona. Es como en Ecuador se dirían como las mingas, que es un trabajo que se hace en común para el beneficio de todos. Es algo que practicamos en el campo, en las comunidades campesinas indígenas. Y eso me hace mucho sonido a lo que es ayuda mutua acá y cómo se ha practicado en Centro Corona. Sí.
Who's ready?
They're too modest.
Hello, I'm from NYC Mesh. We're the Johns, and so it makes it pretty easy. We have the same name. Our main mission, I guess, is to provide free or low-cost internet for as many people in the city as possible. We are a pretty decentralized system, but we do have a kind of central group that we work out of, but it's all volunteer driven. And we connect back to the main hub of the internet, and we have an actual exchange point with that we do maintain. But then everything outside of that is all built by us and is our own setup. And we work in line of sight connections throughout the city is what we have to make that connection. So we have large backbones across it, and then we fill in those gaps from people to people, is kind of how it works. And the other goal out of that is to have the ability to have an open internet, because there's, with the major providers like Spectrum and Verizon and stuff, they do regulate many things that go on it, bandwidth usage and where people are going and that kind of stuff. And we do have to adhere to some major federal regulations, but other than that, we do no policing or no regulation of our own internal network for the users. So that's the other big piece. We've been involved in building to building, like small, brownstones and apartments, connecting them up one by one. But also the other John here will elaborate more on our large building projects. He's been involved in one of the, we've been going into with cooperatives, going into either buildings that are being built out and getting wiring in as we go in, or we've been coming in afterwards and running conduit and running fiber up into buildings and connecting all the units up into them and providing an alternative internet service to those buildings. So that's generally what we do.
So I'll continue that. I'm also John. So yeah, we try and work in, people will, I think our most recent statistic was that we're getting 5 big building install requests per week. So these are co-ops and condo boards and stuff all trying to come together to find ways to get community sourced internet instead of Spectrum or Verizon or some sort of big monopolistic system. I guess I'll speak a little bit to the solidarity economy. I think one of the cool things about the mesh is that we don't really ask for any payment. If you need an internet connection and don't have a way to pay for that, we'll still be able to connect you. So if you're trying to get email and you don't have a way to get a stable income to fund the internet that will get you that email delivered, then Mesh might be an option for you. We also try and broadcast our free Wi-Fi network wherever we're installed. So the wider we expand throughout, I guess, New York City, the more places are able to just kind of walk down the street or be in a park and get your internet. So yeah, I think that's about all I can say.
Yeah. Perhaps pass it to Mike then. Sure.
Hi, everyone. My name is Ayesha. I'm from the Muslim Birthworkers Collective. And thank you. Nice to meet you all. So I'm here, from the Muslim Birthworkers Collective. And essentially what we do is we try to bridge access to care for Muslim community throughout New York City, recognizing that the medical industrial complex, medicalized racism, and so many different factors that ultimately stem from a medical system rooted in racism and capitalism harm our communities. Yeah. And so I myself am a doula, and I see the work that I do as showing up as it's direct action. I'm like at the bedside, making sure that my clients aren't being pressured into decisions that they don't understand or don't want to make. And, coming at that from a Muslim framework and coming from a faith-based organization, it's just in consideration also of like our intrinsic values and making sure that those are upheld no matter where we are, including in medical spaces. Something else I can say about what we do is, inherently that we are rooted in a solidarity-based model and mindset. One way that we are formed is that, or, I guess operated, is that like we collectively share the responsibilities of kind of managing the client load and make sure that we are referring internally and externally to care that is, I think just not Islamophobic and preferably from Muslim providers. We also prioritize language access and so on and so forth. So there are a lot of ways. I think we're kind of trying to formalize into some kind of model. And so that's why I'm here today, to learn more how to do that. We don't want to become a nonprofit. We all hate nonprofits, but we have to do something because we are growing. And so, yeah, I'm happy to answer any questions you have. Yeah. Allahu Akbar. Okay. No?
Featuring,
Sure.
I think one person in the brain that is here would be Jay of Bluestockings. Yeah.
Can you hear me?
Yeah, sure.
Great. So I'm from Bluestockings. It's been around for almost 25 years, and it started as a feminist bookstore, and it started as sort of a volunteer-run solidarity economics sort of standpoint, which kind of just organically bleeds into mutual aid, because that's just the nature of things. So right now we are, we do Narcan trainings. We have a free store, and it kind of just reflects back. We're in Lower East Side, so it reflects back to the community that it was before gentrification. And a lot of the questions that you ask about conflict resolution and a lot of the legal issues that you come across, those are just like, it's great work that we do, but that part really just comes to the foreground because there's just so much pushback in the capitalist economy trying to do mutual aid work, especially when you're working with unhoused populations and those just are historically disfranchised. But it is like every time I'm there, it's like a little utopia. It's just really nice to have a space where everyone is just a human. I just feel so happy to be in that space, and I'm really looking forward to like expanding the network and figure out ways to work together. And we use NYC Mesh So thank you for that. And yeah.
Cool. So I think you only have one featured speaker remaining.
No, we have more. Where is my microphone? Right here. Thank you. Do you want to introduce yourself as well?
Sure. Ollie's looking at me like I'm not supposed to say anything. Hi, I'm Basma. Can I respond or no? Oh, I don't know. I'm not a featured speaker, but I'm an admirer of so many people in this room. I guess like one thing I was thinking about, and Ali actually brought this up to me recently, was like, I think when we think about solidarity economy, or even we think more broadly around like mutualism, mutual aid, it's very much like, I mean, I think in this space, maybe we have probably a bit more holistic and progressive views on it, but I think often it gets very much pigeonholed into the idea of like a direct service transaction, which is not how solidarity works. It's not based off of like, do this for me and I do this for you. And there's also like an element of our like overall economies and systems that like I think should be connected to joy. And so maybe I'll just speak as someone who's part of like a collective football group called Laughing Futbolistas, which in a lot of ways probably wouldn't fit into a model of maybe the solidarity economy, but actually for me, it feels really connected to being in a collectivity where solidarity is really fundamental to how we show up like on like the pitch, but also outside. And I think especially more recently, we found a lot of ways to be bridging kind of praxis between play and organizing. And yeah, I think that's also solidarity economy things.
Thank you. Let me pass it to Yahaira from La Morada.
Hi, sorry, feeling a little bit low, so I had to step back from the group. So my name is Yahaira, and I'm representing La Morada. We're in the South Bronx. South Bronx is known to be the poorest district in the United States. And we already fight a lot of like food insecurity, food apartheid, where we have like the largest food import in the nation at Hunts Point. Yet all that food just like zooms out of the Bronx and goes into the wealthier parts of the city, mainly Manhattan and Brooklyn. Unfortunately, before the pandemic hit, 50% of all food distribution points closed down. Like all the food banks that were there in the South Bronx, 50% of them closed down. And then COVID hit. So in a place where we're already fighting food deserts, food apartheid, food injustice, we're now facing another crisis. And as an undocumented family, all my family has been without status for many years prior to COVID. We already knew off the bat that the most marginalized groups, the people that will be left out, will be undocumented folks. We already are not receiving any food stamps, any sort of social service due to undocumented people being automatically excluded. So we had a kitchen, we had ingredients, and we had the knowledge of like knowing who to serve, who were the people that were going to be the most effective. So we decided to open the kitchen, and we said we're gonna serve soup. First day, we only had about like 100 meals. Within half an hour, all gone. And every single day, it just like tripled in number until like the food line went around the city. We're not a non-for-profit. We're an LLC due to our undocumented status. That was the only business model at that time we were able to open, and this was like 15 years ago. So even if we tried, we can't open a non-for-profit, or we can't open any other sort of business model. But that's the great thing about mutual aid. You know, it's not about bureaucracy. It's about like wanting to help and being there. And contributing with what you have, you know. And during the first couple of months of COVID, it was scary. Like Hunts Point was empty. The supermarkets were empty. And we still had a line going around, and we were like, what are we going to do? And I swear we worked on faith and prayer and community. We didn't know how we were going to feed people, but we let folks know, like, we're willing to continue cooking, but we need onions. We don't have onions. And then that's where the mutual aid network came into hand. They were like, oh yeah, so this major non-for-profit is giving like 100 bags of onions in this one location. And as the non-for-profit industrial works, the food justice system is like, they usually have like 3 very small amounts of vegetables. So one location will have like, per se, 100 bags of potatoes and 100 bags of onions. And another location may have 100 potatoes and 100 bags of carrots. So we were able to connect each other and swap resources to diversify the amount of ingredients that were also distributed to our neighbors through the mutual aid network. But there were also people in the South Bronx at that moment, you know, buildings across the street from us that didn't have light, that didn't have gas. So there was no way for them to cook. There were people who were released out of Rikers and detention centers who were placed in makeshift hotels. The hotels that are now sheltering migrants, that started within like the first year of the COVID pandemic, but it was in lower numbers. And we were going into these hotels already, giving out meals. And I guess like when we talk about like solidarity and like as a business, like in a regular business, I will have to take like the expenses of like having to pay everyone who cooked, having to pay for all the ingredients that were made, that were needed to make a meal. But instead what we did was like, we asked for help, and folks saw where the meals were going and ended up just like contributing however they could. And resources are not only money, it's also time. It's lifting the 60-pound boxes of the USDA. It's trying to figure out what to do with them when most of the milk was spoiled or the cheese and dairy were spoiled, you know? So like repurposing those things in order to not like, to be the least amount of wasteful as possible. So just some experiences. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Let's give it up for La Morada. Yeah. Thank you. Room, welcome new guests to the room. And last but not least, featured speaker wise, we have Dan Castillo from Bushwick. Ayuda Mutua.
Iba a intentar compartir el español, pero me puse como nerviosa. Entonces, aunque sé que estamos en comunidad, I was just sharing, like, I got a little timid. I know we're in community, and it's very nice to see friends and family and familiar faces. Well, I guess I don't know. We're actually in an interesting place right now with Bushwick, Ayuda Mutua, and with BAM, I guess for short, in que we are interrogating, you know, it was BAM responded to the moment of, you know, when we first felt the height of the pandemic and we had to go into lockdown and we were isolated from one another, and it responded by, you know, ensuring folks had groceries, medicine, making deliveries to folks, purchasing things specifically for folks and taking them directly to them, chatting with folks, families on the phone. That's how I got involved. I was feeling very, you know, many of us were feeling isolated and stuck at home because of course we had to be for our health and our like community's health. But it was tough. And there was a call that said like, we need bilingual folks who can spend some hours every day responding to phone calls. And that's something I appreciate about like mutual aid models and networks, is that there's not any one way of showing up. And in general, I really like the activist network maps. I don't know if folks have seen it, where it talks about like the different roles we can all play in community. There's there's like storytellers, visionaries, like rapid response folks, and we can't be all of them. And so in that moment where it felt like there wasn't much we could do, there was actually a lot of ways that folks responded creatively, as Yaya was mentioning, the ways in which, like, you know, being resourceful and also building solidarity amongst groups. And so but that was at the start of the pandemic, and the ways in which BAM has had like its structure and work has shifted over the years. And I think we're in this moment of interrogating how we go beyond the moment of just like meeting kind of like essential need or material need, and how we build beyond that. You know, we've built a lot of systems over the years. We've built like systems for consensus decision making. We've built systems for like capacity building and training. There are ways in which we have integrated like technology into some of our systems, ways that I think, you know, has allowed for capacity building, but ways that I feel can also be exclusionary. And a lot of things have shifted over the years, and I think we're in a moment of kind of like interrogating that and thinking to the future how we can build in more of the base building potential of mutual aid. In some of our recent conversations in town halls, we've been kind of also forced to ask this question, because we had to, I don't know if a lot of mutual aid groups were kind of had to reckon with like finding a new fiscal sponsor after like a platform that a lot of folks used was shutting down. And it also made us like question, like, okay, what if we, you know, we started with a lot of resourcefulness and not receiving the amount of support that we do now as we've grown over the years. But what would it look like if we like shifted some of our modes? And that to me is like what us as a group, like what is very motivating is that there's aspects of this work that really challenges and pushes up against the limitation, like scarcity mindset. I know a lot of I know surely in my family, like immigrant communities, like growing up, like there's been a lot of imposition of a scarcity mindset. And for me, I see a lot of the work like upholding and honoring solidarity economy principles through collaboration and through coalition building, recognizing there's when we receive, there are certain things that we purchase with the funds that we receive through crowdfunding. We purchase food for families in Bushwick and Ridgewood and the surrounding neighborhoods, and like some of the essential goods that we also receive a lot of donations of, like in abundance. And we've chosen, you know, over the years to specifically work with like a farm upstate, Star Route, to be able to talk about like local economies. But there's a lot that we don't have to spend money on, right? There's so much clothing like in our community, around our community. We collaborate and work with Mil Mundos en Común, bilingual libreria bookstore in Bushwick, and the basement is just like, I can't tell you the amount of times I've been down there, and it's like filled to the brim of clothing. It's just, there's always so much clothing. Like we see it as like the commons, you know, there's so much. And of course there's always a conversation about, you know, like not just seeing donation as like getting rid of something, but rather giving it new life and handing it off to new like the next phase. And sometimes we get into conversations about, you know, making sure things are passed on with dignity. But for the most part, there's always so much clothing, and there's so much to share, and there's like there should be no scarcity around that. So I'm really moved by the moments of collaboration in which recently we've partnered with, and we've partnered in the past with like Undocumented Women's Fund, and as folks are having to deal with the evictions and being moved from hotels migrant families or compas. We've been trying to support them in getting like maletas, bags, backpacks, anything, clothing that they might need, because there's, we can source that from our own community. And then other collaborations, such as, I'm happy to see the Mesh folks here. Mesh came out to one of the distros, and there was a lot of interest in it, and I've never seen a table so like there was so much interest there. So I guess just to wrap up, sorry, I didn't realize I was rambling so much. Just to wrap up, I think like we've been interrogating how to continue pushing, like going beyond the moment of like maybe like having that like moment of exchange of meeting and material needs, and building up on like our interests, desires, passions, dreams for the future.
Thank you. We have also two more awesome people, Hafizah and Milton from Centro. Do you want to add something else about the work of Centro that you want to mention? Centro Corona in Corona, Queens. Okay.
Yeah, hi everyone. My name is Hafizah, and I'm with Centro with Milton and Monica here. It's just been wonderful to hear people's stories around like what mutual aid efforts they've been part of. We're an autonomous community organization in Corona in Queens, and the way that we've been really thinking about what our mutual aid practice or like solidarity practice is, really thinking about what it looks like to build political education and political processes through the work of organizing that we do. So we've really grounded in just like this vision of like abolitionist vision. So what does it look like to create alternative community, alternative networks of care, right? And like that community care includes political education, right? And to understand the forces that are coming into our neighborhoods, the idea of like, or what Ruth Wilson Gilmore calls organized abandonment, and how not to collaborate with those forces coming into the neighborhood, right? And thinking about like the role of nonprofits, the role of politicians, charities, and billionaires, right? And so that's kind of like, as we're thinking about, I think like a lot of times when people say mutual aid, they think about like the mutual aid network that came out of COVID, that we did in partnership with Queens Neighborhood United and Project Habrá. And, we sunsetted that in 2021 after just, after a lot of discussion and decisions. But I think thinking about like how we built that network is also true. People that we know, right? Like it's and the decision to make it that it'll be 200 people in the network and not, it's not going to be like new random people. So we supported people for 2 years. That's also part of like, and the invitation is to be part of a political process with Centro, right? And that's how we were like beginning to think about like what this mutuality and solidarity could look like.
Voy a hablar en español. Voy a tratar también. Sí, para añadir lo de Hafizah, le doy eco a todo lo que dijo. Lo primero diría, Centro Corona ha existido como un espacio ya desde el 2012 más o menos, ya tiene algún tiempo, pero en diferentes aspectos y relaciones con instituciones culturales o instituciones cívicas, y pues nos desplazaron en el 2018 y eso también la comunidad de poco en poco pues ya practicaba otras maneras de congregarse y de organizarse, y pues eso nos llevó pues a crear una autonomía, ¿no? Una estructura un poco más autónoma en el sentido de que nosotros podamos hasta poder negociar cómo usamos el espacio y la política de cómo usar el espacio que teníamos. Entonces, Centro Corona en sí es un espacio en la comunidad. que también vemos como un recurso que no se tienen en las comunidades donde existe densidad. Bueno, en ninguna comunidad aquí en Nueva York, espacio de parqueadero te va a costar para parquear un carro de juguete, te va a costar plata, ¿no? Entonces aquí el espacio es un lujo, se puede decir, y el espacio comunitario pues ni siquiera te dan como derecho, ni siquiera es como un sueño para la gente, ¿no? Entonces nosotros el trabajo que hacemos es bastante el mantener un espacio abierto, pero abierto significa abierto a personas que también quieran estar en un proceso colectivo de aprendizaje y de tratar de ver alternativas de cómo hacer cultura, cómo organizar el cuidado y regresando a la comunica dijo para abrir el espacio, ¿no? A estas ideas de la minga, a estas ideas de la mutualidad, que también oí la definición que trajeron a colación al principio, ¿no? Que lo de la ayuda mutua tiene que ver con el beneficio mutuo. Entonces nosotros también en Centro pensamos en lo que es, cuál es mismo el beneficio mutuo que existe, ¿no? Y en comunidades que existen crisis de comida, crisis de hogar, crisis de espacios, a veces el beneficio mutuo se piensa en, bueno, yo tengo ahorita una necesidad y esas necesidades del beneficio, ¿no? Pero nosotros creo que introducimos más ideas y más capas de qué es lo que es el beneficio mutuo para largo plazo, ¿no? Que es educarnos entre nosotros, crear maneras de cuidarnos entre nosotros y de ahí ver qué posibilidades podemos tener, ¿no? Para terminar en medio minuto. El contexto de Corona es un poquito similar al contexto de Yajaira que compartió en el sentido del Bronx. En Corona es una comunidad, es la más densamente poblada en todo Nueva York. La renta nunca, así hasta durante COVID, que la renta se vio que bajó en todos los lugares, la renta nunca bajó en Corona, más bien subió. Existieron mayor caso de muertes, existen bastantes personas recién llegadas, migrantes van a Corona, existe bastantes problemas también con techo, ¿no? De gente no tener techo. Entonces, en ese contexto, entran organizaciones, entran visionarios, entran todo este ecosistema de decir, nosotros tenemos comida y vamos a darle comida y vamos a dar caridad. Y entonces ya existe este ecosistema también de que la gente hace dinero y hace reputación y hace sus carreras lidiando en estas cosas que le llaman después de ayuda mutua. Entonces nosotros no queremos colaborar en eso y no queremos participar en esos sistemas, entonces tratamos de hacer otras alternativas que a veces no son visibles, pero al mismo tiempo queremos decirle a la gente que, bueno, queremos tener educación política sobre no colaborar con estas otras cosas, que a veces están atadas a los progresos, los desarrollos del bienes raíces, más en su parte, ¿no? Y sí, entonces ese es el trabajo un poquito de Centro. Entonces nosotros cambiamos la manera que nos ayudamos entre nosotros, dependiendo de lo que necesita la gente en la red, básicamente.
Muchas gracias, muchas gracias. Queremos tomarnos 5 minutos de descanso y volver para que ustedes, entre ustedes, se hagan preguntas entre sus grupos y nos cuenten cuáles son los recursos que necesitan, que quieren compartir, y también podremos hablar un poco de cómo seguimos nutriendo las redes de ayuda mutua a largo plazo, con una perspectiva de que somos parte del movimiento de movimientos de la economía solidaria, que tenemos principios que compartimos. En 5 minutitos regresamos y nos vamos a comer unas pastitas y unas empanadas. Lo sentimos mucho a la gente de Zoom. Pero nos vemos en un ratito. Les vamos a dejar con música. Yuko nos va a dejar con música para la gente de Zoom. Entonces, en 5 minutos volvemos a las 7:12. Hiciéramos un chat de la gente que está en Zoom. Que hagamos una consigna de Zoom. Ya viene Chivita para que nos ayude con una consigna para el Zoom, para que nos digan, para que hagamos una consigna en el Zoom. Ok. Entonces vamos a continuar. Si podemos poner la pantalla, pero compartida para poder ver la siguiente diapositiva. Entonces, como dijimos, estamos aquí revisando y reflexionando cuáles son los desafíos y la manera en la que organizamos la sociedad y conectamos la economía solidaria. Entonces, les queremos dar el micrófono a las personas que están aquí para que nos cuenten un poco. Siguiente diapositiva, por favor. Exacto. ¿Cómo ustedes, como grupos, voy a cambiar al inglés? How do mutual aid practices like food distribution, childbirth support, overdose prevention, 2 libraries? We have Flatbush mixtape in the Zoom if they can share about their work, embody the solidarity economy principles, right? And how do you see potential connections maybe in your neighborhood? For example, we always see this scenario and this system in which, this ecosystem, sorry, in which we know that there is cooperative housing that need more fresh food, and there is a community garden next door, and there is community supported agriculture somewhere in the area, and there is also now the mesh, right? And so how do we interconnect, and how can we do that? How can we continue to build the ecosystem of the movements of the solidarity economy, and what will you do? How would you like to do that? And if there is any resources or needs that you want to share among us here, well, we can support each other and know what you think about this. So who would like, let's take a minute to think also, but in general, just, the example that Bluestockings utilizes the mesh, and also the Bushwick mutual aid. And if we walk in the Lower East Side, is one of the places where historically we have seen the tissue of the solidarity economy to be this legacy of self-organization, of people really taking in their own hands the way that they want to live, the way that they want to manage their, no, I don't like the word manage, the way that they want to organize their land and the use of land. And in a place that is such a high value real estate area, we see the shield that the solidarity economy has provided for those practices, right? If you go to the Lower East Side, we have the Bluestockings, we have the 4th Street Food Co-op, we have several community gardens that we know are a historical tradition from Puerto Rican communities, stopping development, right? Stopping development so that we can have green space, public space, access to land. So how about we start also thinking that, yes, the city is cool. We have all of these things. We're in this situation, economic, socioeconomic, but we're also in many ways landless people. So how about we start thinking about that too in our politics, right? And how do we do community control solutions for every single aspect of our life? So that's the dream, right? And we think that you are part of the dream and are making it happen already. So here is the mic, and we hope that we can connect more with other co-ops that are maybe also struggling with imagining how to do more mutual aid work, because they are also focused on their own needs, right? Their own, for example, I'm thinking specifically, for example, about people that live in cooperative housing. Here, it's very difficult to manage a building, right? You have to actually figure it out, the maintenance. You have to figure it out how to do everything. There is no, sometimes, and we are in the crisis of those models because the city has also abandoned the subsidies for that kind of housing. So little by little, we keep losing that. But we know, for example, in many neighborhoods in Manhattan, also in some parts of Queens, that those models have been able to help change community ownership and to build generational wealth in a way that circulates and it doesn't accumulate or extract from the communities. And neighborhoods remain as places where people can age, right? So we are facing all of these changes, and it's important to think about that. So yeah, I guess it's a reflection, sort of open, but if you want some guiding questions, we would love to hear how you're doing. What are the challenges? What are you learning? Because mutual aid, some of the initiatives are born from crisis, and it's sometimes, as Dani was saying, transitioning from that into a long-term and a group that has democratic principles, that invites new people, that are doing political education, that we want to expand. That's the challenge, right? So here's the mic, and we are super grateful that you want to share your thoughts. You can just hold it. Yeah.
¿Alguien quiere compartir? I can. Sí.
So I think one thing that is coming up from the conversation that we were just having also is, and this is a challenge, but also like something from learned experience with us at Centro Corona, is this issue of like what it means to expand, what it means to do base building and scaling up, right? That I think is any of this cooperative work and of the solidarity economy, when you face the idea of scaling up, then I think you always encounter these tensions of capitalism, of what scaling up really means, right? And productivity, what all of that means. And for the mutual aid that happened during COVID, which was a decision that was done with Centro Corona, but also other organizations like Queens, that were mentioned, Queens Neighborhoods United, Project Habrá. The need of access to food, the need of, and it wasn't just food, it was also calls, weekly calls. It was it was talking about mental health. There was all these other things that went around that. The need, we knew it would never go away. It would just remain, right? Other things needed to change for that. And we knew that very early on that it would only expand, right? Like I remember doing the first list of people from our network, and it was 10 people. And then the next day it was 30. And then the next day, it was like, okay, this is, what do you do with that, right? Like, how do you scale up? And, we cannot romanticize the fact that community is always going to scale up and meet that need. So we made the decisions to say like, okay, we're going to take care of this amount of people, and we're going to redefine what it means to take care of these folks, and not say like, okay, we're going to feed 3,000 people, but because we cannot do that. Other folks with other setups might be able to do that. But what we can do is we can deepen with this 200 people for as long as we can, right? And then from that, then you try to deepen with even, it turns out even less, right? So it's about the work of deepening and like how to actually tell other people and kind of sell that idea about, well, it takes a lot of resources to take care of one family, honestly. And one conversation I have sometimes at the space with other folks is like, because we have families that have been there for years, or people is like, okay, how many resources have gone to be able to support each other and see one family go through? And it's like, it's an insurmountable. It's just to visualize what the resources that really are needed for one person to flourish, or for two, and that anyone can see like a whole organization around that should be enough. That they shouldn't be asking or to be like, okay, no, you have to do 3,000 stories like that, because the actual resources for one family to flourish, for one young person to like really learn through history, right, are massive. And it's okay if a bunch of people are just trying to do that, you know, and go from there. Yeah, so the question of scale.
Thank you so much, Milton. Appreciate that. Anybody else spark some thoughts there? Okay, we got. Sorry. Please have the mic.
So the biggest struggle for La Morada Mutual Aid has been just like keeping integrity on its principle as mutual aid. You know, we have a guideline saying we're not going to work with certain people like developers, gentrifiers, the NYPD, certain non-for-profits that are really, what do you call it, poverty pimping, catastrophe, what's the word? Yes, yes, right? So like, just on that point alone, right, there was this major organization, when we found out that they work with Homeland Security, we said, we need that money, we truly do, to continue working. You know, we were feeding at one point over 1,000 meals a day, and this is like a small restaurant. And what they were providing was nowhere close to covering the cost of the ingredients alone. So we came out of pocket a lot. And we needed that money to at least pay the light bills. But we knew that working with them meant endorsing their partnerships and their principles. So we said no. And then other people outreached to us and said, you stopped working with them, why? And we explained why. And then they said, okay, we're gonna step back. 3 years later, the same big NGO goes abroad. And there's this like big masquerade of like, we're helping out the community right now. But there's hidden agendas, right? And here I am, like, I know what hunger is. I'm not gonna take away that bite of food from the folks that are in need right now. So I'm not gonna say anything. But I don't trust them. And then that's where I feel like my integrity is at stake. There's other times where we have voiced out our concerns of certain NGOs, of certain people who have certain ties with people or organizations that harm the community, and we are under fire. So it's hard to process and say when to say something and when not, because it's never crystal clear.
Got it. Thank you for those reflections. Yeah, I'm hearing echoes of Milton describing, right, how to sort of do this particular type of work outside of certain systems. But I think, I'd like to also add that, the Cooperative Economics Alliance, you saw that map, and Maria had just mentioned something, for example, like the 4th Street Food Cooperative, right? That's a cooperative grocery store. It's a consumer cooperative. That's a model which is neither a for-profit business, right, of a traditional kind, or a nonprofit, or a mutual aid group. So maybe also reflecting on how can these different ways of practicing cooperation or solidarity learn from one another, right? Aisha, you kind of mentioned too, it's like, okay, you have this collective. What would it mean to convert that into something, let's say, that borrows from a worker cooperative model? And how would you actually make that happen, right? What would be the steps to take to go to Bushwick and think about the community-supported agriculture, of which there's dozens and dozens, including in Bushwick, right? How does that relate to food distribution? So I just want to also add that, have people given any thought or taken steps to approach those more formal, quote unquote, cooperative models in your work or in your internal combos?
I think something that we've done in the Muslim Birthworkers Collective is we always make sure that the birth workers that work with us and whatever way we end up stepping up and supporting community, that's compensated as often as possible, and that we can provide resources and support and like continued growth along, you know, any member of our collective's experience. You know, oftentimes the work of birth work, any kind of like emotional, physical, like honestly, feminized labor is not compensated, not valued, taken for granted, and kind of just seen as like very invisibilized, as crucial as it is. And so we take active steps to combat that and just recognize that there's a need for so much support when you do such hard work. And yeah, so along with just making sure that folks can be compensated, we do like slow down our work when we need to make sure that we are actively, one, able to do that, and also able to process where we are, that we're not rushing and moving against our principles and our values. In this moment in particular, in Muslim communities, and me and Besma were just talking about this, we are in a moment of collective grief. How do you work, and how do you continue to move as the very like the institutions that you're navigating are contributing to the death and destruction of just Palestinians, their land, and actively contributing to the entity that's genociding them. So as we're navigating that grief in our communities, holding that space, and also like showing up for work, for the work that we do, it's just really important to remember that, yeah, we have to slow down. So in thinking about like how to make a model, right? How do you prepare for, I think, like the ebbs and flows of capacity, the changing nature of what our needs are, as we understand that what we're doing is justice work. What we're doing is like, you know, to move ourselves and our communities towards like greater care for one another, and to hold grief together, but also to make sure that like we can show up as we're navigating institutions that are actively harming our communities. So I hope that answered the question. A lot came up, but yeah. Okay.
Thank you. So I'll start by, I'm having a little bit of tech issues. So I missed a little bit of the question, but I kind of got a little bit of context. Kind of talking about the formal institutions and how that goes into like the mutual aid, which is much more community-based and you know, not really about the economy itself. So the cooperative started as it was an S Corp during the pandemic. It turned into a C Corp.
Which cooperative is that, Jay?
I'm sorry?
Just to remind people, which group are you talking about that you work with?
Oh, sorry. I'm with Bluestockings Cooperative in the Lower East Side.
Thank you.
So it is a queer, trans, and sex worker-owned bookstore. So a lot of the worker owners come from backgrounds which are, you know, haven't historically disfranchised. And this has been a cooling center during the pandemic. We kind of expanded our mutual aid offerings. So we get a lot of folks who have a lot of mental needs that need to be addressed, which, you know, obviously the state is, no one's going to address it. So it takes a lot of emotional labor. It is a lot of labor to deal with that. And it is really critical to value it because, and they end up building relationships with these people, because the people we want to hire and have joined the cooperative and have this opportunity to not work in a capitalist system are the people that, you know, have these lived experiences as having bouts of homelessness or, you know, just like real trauma. And we just want to make sure that when they are working, their labor is valued. And then it goes into then the mutual aid part where it's like, how do we get the resources to make sure that they are, you know, they have a house to stay in and they can feed themselves. And that's really, that's pretty tough. And then we kind of just like, as worker owners, some of us will just not take our pay, or we'll just like invest it back into the co-op, or we'll just say, oh, we'll just get paid later on at some uncertain date. So just so that people who need the money can get paid, or we'll give them our sick hours or our PTOs and things like that. And so anyway, so we are currently an LLC, and we started a nonprofit arm to kind of, you know, like not get taxed on all our stuff. But it's like a whole, it's really hard to navigate it, especially like when we're trying to literally hold space where anybody can come in. You get so entangled in the legalness of it, because like the state just doesn't want people to have community. Like they actively make it really hard for people to have a place to be. And it's just, yeah, so like solidarity economy with the cooperative and collective decision making, and making sure that, you know, people have an opportunity, the most disfranchised have an opportunity to participate in the economy, and then balancing that with mutual aid is really tough. And we're figuring it out, but then I think it's about the people, and like, and that's where the solidarity economy comes in, where you just have to like talk it out, and it goes case by case. I don't think there's like a right answer. I hope I answered the question a little bit, because I missed a little bit of it, but yeah.
Cool. Thanks, Jay. That was maybe the answer was so awesome because you didn't hear all the question. The question was the problem. So we got one hand here. I just want to be conscious of time. I think we had planned to go to around 8 and kind of see the conversation flowing, but appreciate that they're on the Zoom maintaining. So shout out to you. And actually, did I see Q's hand briefly go up and down from Flatbush Mixtape, or was I imagining things? Oh, see, I was imagining things. Thank you, Chivi. Okay, so from the floor here, we have another contributor. Please introduce yourself, since you have not yet spoken.
Hi, everyone. I'm Jody. I think similar, like I'm not sure if I'm going to exactly answer the question, but what was prompted for me is really taking a moment to, you know, when thinking about different communities that folks are working with, to really take into consideration what the needs are, and the fact that that's going to be shifting based on context, based on community, identity, language, so many different factors that are going to be coming into play. And so actually, like, before I even found out about this event earlier today, I was at New York City Council for the experiences of Black migrants in New York City hearing, which had been scheduled for some time now, but it really took showing up to understand what a momentous and historical moment it was. There are reports that there were at least several hundred, or potentially even 1,000 or over 1,000 African asylum seekers who showed up to City Hall Park today because they understood the implications of the moment and the context of the hearing, and why showing up even to infrastructure that's antagonistic to them was important so that they can be a part of the conversation and have a greater access to their self-determination. And so to me, when I was inside, what I saw was the city has been very problematic with language access generally, but at least today for the hearing, they did have earpieces for at least some translation into some languages that folks needed access to. And so folks who were perhaps coming from shelters, who perhaps maybe did not even eat were sitting for 5, 6 hours. Some people stayed essentially the whole time listening to everything that was being said by, their peers, by other African asylum seekers, by advocates, by city workers on all level, and including folks all across the spectrum in terms of people who are allies and some people who are honestly vehemently anti-Black and xenophobic and Islamophobic. It's a community of people that is predominantly, yes, coming from a lot of countries, and Africa is not a monolith, but patterns have been identified, and there are a lot of people coming from West African countries that are, yes, folks speak different languages, but also in some cases Francophone, and also African Muslim people. And so they're at the intersection of a lot of points of marginalization and antagonism when we talk about Islamophobia, when we talk about anti-Blackness, so many forms of structural alienation and marginalization. I bring all that up because, I didn't know what everybody was going to be speaking to. There's a lot of folks that spoke on a range of different ways in which themselves or their organizations have been showing up, providing care, from mutual aid collectives up to, large, well-funded CBOs with $1 million budgets. And so when I started off by saying, assessing what are the needs. For different communities, there are different needs. For this community, language is a huge crux that intersects and overlaps with every single thing else, including shelter, including understanding shelter policies, including having access to even starting their asylum applications, which is necessary to then even wait 150 days to potentially get work authorization. And so that's that's a major need. And so what I want folks to think about is, a lot of folks have a lot of different understandings of what abolitionist politics looks like in practice, what radical politics actually look like. But to me, someone quoted Ruth Wilson Gilmore earlier today. Another quote of hers that folks that I know talk about a lot is abolitionist presence. And so, thank you, I'll wrap it up. And so, what I want folks, it's more of a question, but there are organizations communities that need more have to take into consideration and weigh the implications of whether or not they're going to be engaging with certain types of organizations. And based on my understanding, communities that have at least had a little bit more access when it comes to cooperatives or even worker co-ops are usually anchored out of nonprofits. There are nonprofits, there are whole infrastructures and ecosystems where the folks that are incubating worker co-ops that provide dignified jobs for people are nonprofit organizations, and it is what it is. And so I could have a critique of the NPIC, but what does it look like to hold certain communities to a higher standard when we demand that folks opt out of certain systems? There are nonprofits that have incubated house cleaning, home care, all kinds of co-ops that are serving other communities. When it comes to this community, there's a nonprofit that honestly I'm agnostic. I don't care to share any critiques or praises of them, but I will say they are playing a particular role. So there's this group, ACT, African Communities Together, and they are launching a worker co-op that is called Afrolingual. And it's a co-op of African people who speak a variety of languages, who can be able to provide key translation that is at the crux of a lot of the state violence that the city is allowed to get away with because they keep on using lack of language access as an excuse. So I'm gonna pass the mic back, but to do a what is it, too long, didn't read? When we look at the systems that we know are problematic, what standards are we holding people to when we say, yes, criticize these systems, or perhaps even divest from certain systems? That's fine, but where should they go when there is not infrastructure? And when, in this case, we're talking about a community of very newly arriving people where we have not faced this ever before historically. I'm Jamaican. we do not know what to do. I'm a Black English-speaking migrant. The Black immigrant community is facing issues where people are coming from a vast amount of countries speaking many languages that I am just learning about. And so when folks, ask these questions, what does it look like to ask them in a way that's not theoretical, but actually directly applies to some of the most marginalized people who are here in our cities, in our communities right now, and addressing their most dire and most direct needs?
Thank you so much for that. And just to say that, Jody, I think that this is an issue with incubators, nonprofits, and the infrastructure that the city has put in place in the past decade for cooperatives. We are critical of how that has turned out and how we assess what works and what doesn't work. And I think that, yes, having specific ways of making cooperatives sustainable, able to respond to the needs of their communities, and actually have seed capital to actually be able to pay people living wages and all of that, that is the question that we as a solidarity economy movement need to put in agenda for all of our demands to every relationship we have with each other and with the institutions that are supposedly created to help us, right? I think that Afrilingual is a great project, and I think that they should be thriving. And I really honestly think that the organizations that incubate cooperatives and that work with nonprofits need to be held accountable on how they use the money. And we all are actually always having these conversations. I am former part of a language cooperative that we also had a lot of questions about sustainability of this model, instead of just the hype of making everything co-op, which is not the case, not what we want at all. And we know that the base of this is actually changing relations, the way that we relate to each other. And just using the model to start businesses is not the answer. But I mean, I hope that this conversation continues, but we should talk after to see, because what we try to do is, as language justice practitioners, we want to seed the work in our communities to actually be able to sustain volunteer networks of language workers, which is a matter of creating other spaces for community work, for food, for education, and which is what we try to do in these mutual aid networks, right? To actually support not only with crisis food and these kinds of needs, but also all the other needs. We want everything for everybody, right? So who else would like to share? Ali has something else.
Oh, I was just going to make a suggestion. Tell me what y'all think, especially on the Zoom. We closing in on 8 o'clock here. So I wanted to see, just in terms of like next steps and imagining the concreteness that we all so love and need. If each group that's reps here could just say one thing that they're going to do based on this discussion here, and specifically how they might build these relationships with some of those groups on that map we showed, right? The more, let's call them formal sectors that we're describing. What's one step y'all want to take so that you can more deeply connect with them, exchange lessons, become homies, etc. So, and what do you want Scenic to do, of course, and the people in the Zoom, some of whom are leaders within 1199 SEIU. We've been working with them, right? So so how, be as concrete as you possibly can, just some ideas that came up and a commitment so that we can all kind of like publicly commit together, put a ring on it. Is that what they say? No, they don't say that. So, which group would like to, NYC Mesh, John?
My commitment is to see through the work that we've started with BAM, and we had a very successful install-a-thon last weekend. Bushwick, Ayuda, so all right, and we getting it started and getting that going is it's not easy, but it's definitely the easiest part, because seeing that through and establishing a a center there that can support itself once we move to the next, outreach project is very important. So the thing that we could get help with that I will put out there is our group has a diversity problem, and that's just it. We when you all came and talked to us at our thing, Willard and I looked at each other, and I was like, we have a diversity problem, and so, but we got to get over that hump to get in there. So what we're looking for is we can offer some extremely valuable, I think, technical training for any Spanish-speaking people who would be interested in getting involved with the community. So we can sit down and go through anything they want to know. We can work through it. This is how we have everybody come to us, but it's all in English, and we got to get out of that mode. So we successfully installed things with just using our translators and working through it. But for that long-term support, we need to get that seed in there and keep it going. So my commitment though is to see the BAM Alliance move till it's a self-sustaining model that can run on its own.
Okay, the Johns. So, for example, we have the Tompkins Square bistro that happens in the Lower East Side, right, for food. If people want to go there and log in with their phone in the mesh, can they do that? Use that internet?
If there is a connection that's available there, right? So yeah, like the Bluestockings, there we go. That's available in there, where whenever we put a note in, we put a public Wi-Fi spot on it. Okay. So that helps get the word out. People see like, oh, hey, look.
Right. Okay. So we will make sure also to map that out. So maybe people that are participating in all these food distros can share those resources with other people, right? Who else would like to share something else? You? Yeah.
Hey everyone, I'm Elise. I work at New Economy Project and I work with community land trusts. So I think there's a lot of opportunities that community land trusts or CLTs can collaborate and partner with groups in the solidarity economy and mutual aid groups. So for example, I'm sure all the buildings that sit on CLT land would love to have mesh, and maybe you already do. But Cooper Square Community Land Trust has 16, actually they now have 18 buildings in the Lower East Side, or East New York CLT, as we heard at the last event, just got a new building in East New York. So, or, maybe the Muslim Birthing Collective, is that what it is? Or, wants a space, and that space could be on a CLT. So I think there's a lot of possible collaboration. And also, we want to invite you to our rally that we're having on Thursday for the Community Land Act to fight for more land and housing to be taken out of the speculative market and put into community control for permanent affordability, so we can have more control over what we do, where we live, and our communities as a whole. So yeah, thank you all.
Who else would like to share? Yeah. Thank you, Dani.
Gracias. I appreciate the conversation and comments, particularly about I guess this criticism of the infrastructure that's been built out by city and nonprofits and or I guess the desire to as Maria mentioned, I guess to create everything, make it into a business. And I think something we've been talking about as our communities and neighborhoods have been welcoming new neighbors and recently arriving families, many of who the relationships I've built up and we've built up has actually have Ayuda Mutua in collaboration with many other a whole array of mutual aid groups across the city, you know, a lot of folks have actually, you know, it's been a year or two for some folks who've been arriving, right? And they very much, they're home now. And we have been thinking about, you know, there's so much, like, I know a compa who knows like 8 languages. You know, there's so much, like there's so much to skills and saberes and knowledges and things to offer. And you know, there's this struggle of like not accepting the dynamic, this imposed like violent system that just makes folks into workers. I feel like everything is about just like turning folks into workers because of it's, you know, the reality of which is what we're trying to challenge, right? That we all need to like have an income or make a living to like survive. And that's a biggest challenge, right? Folks are looking for work and looking for jobs. And there's been conversation about like within BAM particularly of how we build out like our base building, community building, you know, spaces to just sit and chat with one another, learn where we're coming from, what we want to offer to this space, what we want to build together. And a major issue that came into that was like childcare. And we've been starting to talk about like what it could look like, you know, if we had like more cooperative care systems like that. There's so much to offer within our community there. But I'm also like with what was shared by Maria and by Jody of these criticisms of that, of like not just, I guess, like running to the desire of, I guess, making a business. I like thinking through sustainably how we could do that. And that's something we've started. There's been some conversation. I know there's some interest, very genuinely, like, I guess, putting it out there for support or help in those conversations, how we can build those sustainable models. Because I guess another commitment I'm making is like within our community building, political education work, placing our mutual aid work, always remembering that it's political. We do these in like when we have our assemblies and our meeting spaces, but placing it in a political context within solidarity economy, Elise, but also pushing it further, right? And just building out that work more. And I made a note of hopefully if other folks want to collaborate on that, particularly how we talk about it in the solidarity economy and talk about co-ops and how we sustain them though, because these criticisms are real.
I think we have Jay one more time, and then Milton. If we can stay, we have to close the Zoom in 2 minutes, but we are going to stay here in person to chat more. But we want to give the microphone to Jay so that we can say goodbye to people in the Zoom. Go ahead, Jay.
Okay, great. So yeah, I just want to, we're in the Lower East Side. We also, Tompkins Square Distro is right there. So I just want to offer the space, a commitment to like, we're open every day except for Monday. A space where people do come and take a nap because, people are unhoused at times. So we have the NYC Mesh Free Internet. We also have language classes. So we have the Spanish to English, but, we offer the space for events all the time. So, and I, please reach out if you want a space for any kind of event. And sort of something that we want to build towards is because our mutual aid, we have issues with our landlord. It affects our gentrification project. So we probably will be ending our lease early. So what we're looking for is ideally to buy another, like actually own our space. We're like just started talking about it. But we really think it's critical to hold space. So we do want to find a sustainable way to do it. And I think grouping together different, solidarity groups, whether it's mutual aid or cooperatives. I would be very interested in like learning more about that to see how the cooperatives can create like a larger network and have our own space in the Lower East Side. And I had another sort of thing before I get cut off. I guess I lost it, but I'm very thankful to be here. And yeah, please reach out. And thank you.
Thank you, Jay. Maybe can we have the slide presentation one for a second just to close the Zoom? You go, thank you. Like 1 minute. Like. And so next slide, we know that people have different approaches to mutual aid, but basically we know that it's changing how resources circulate. Next slide, I was just gonna read this quickly. No, this is not the descanso, but we want to invite people to come and join us for a Solidarity Economy one-on-one workshop at Co-op City at the end of April, so that you can come and see how the largest housing cooperative in the world works and how they are organizing. And yes, how many units are there? It is in the Bronx, more than 15,000. So it is in the world, probably. No, it is in the world. So no, I'm not exaggerating. But let us know in the chat if you want to come. And the next slide, please. Also, please stay in touch, save our information, email us. We have our next Solidarity Spotlight is in May, not in April. I am so sorry that it says there, but we will email you and send the information. It's the third Tuesday of the month, and so is May 19th is the next one. And we hope that you join us. We're going to talk about food and gardens. So it's related to food and gardens, and we want to give a shout out to all the farms that are part of our ecosystem that feed us, and hope to make connections with the farmers and amplify our ideas on how we're going to create and renew our food ecosystem and our food sovereignty, because we depend completely on the farmland. So thank you so much for being here. Let's give it up for all of you that are here. We're going to continue the conversation in person, but let's say our friends to remember, I'm sorry, it's the Tuesday, May 21st is the next session. We're terrible at announcing our own events, but here we are improving, and we hope to see you. And as I said, please stay in touch and visit each other when you can. Let us know if we can support the connection. We are also always trying to build the regional networks, and happy to support in any way we can. Thank you. Bye, Zoom.